Hello everyone, I am Siddharthan. This is the first Python project in my YouTube channel where we are going to build a simple calculator in Python. So I've been posting videos on Python programming basics, but I thought that it's better for us to work on some use cases and projects along with those conceptual and Python course videos because the implementation of whatever you learn, let's say that you have learned a for loop, while loop, or a function. So when you're going to implement that on use cases and projects, it's kind of a better practice for you to understand the whole picture, and you would get a better implementation and hands-on knowledge as well. So moving forward, let's focus on both those conceptual syntax-based implementation videos, and also let's work on some use cases and mini project kind of a videos. So here we have started with a very simple use case of building a calculator, but again in the upcoming weeks let's build the complexity. So let's work on like medium to advanced use cases as well, where you're going to learn a lot of programming concepts in an hands-on way. So I hope you are excited to learn this, and let's get started. So for building this, I'm going to use a IDE. So let's not use Jupyter Notebook. It's not better for writing scripts. So if you're like working on some exploratory code, then Jupyter Notebooks Collab are really helpful. But if you're building these scripts and building these applications, IDEs are always going to be helpful. Like there are like several advantages, like having a debugger tool, access to terminal, and so on. There are like a lot of advantages that you can have. So I'm going to use PyCharm, but you can like use VS Code as well. So it's completely fine. So PyCharm VS Code is like my preference, but again, you can use other IDEs of your choice. So I've already posted video on how you can get started with PyCharm. So if not, I'll give the link of that video in this video description. You can look that in order to set up your environment with PyCharm and so on. So once that is done, we can create a new project. So here I can go to this main menu and create this project. So here I can specify a directory where I want to save this file. So let's say that I have this folder called as video code files, and within that I have this calculator app directory. So I'm selecting this, and this is the subdirectory that's going to create here. So I'll call this as calculator app env video. So this is for the one that I'm recording. So I'll just like mention this video. So in the latest version of PyCharms, right? So you don't have to put a name over here. You can just like attach it over here. So it wouldn't like show the name here. And again, this is the name of the subdirectory. So it's like not that complex at all. And then you would have this base Python. So if you have already installed Python in your machine, so it will like show up here. If not, you can download like the other versions that are available. So here I'm choosing custom environment, and we can have a virtual environment. So that's going to stay only for this project, so that there is no conflicts with the libraries that you have for other projects. So usually what would happen is, let's say that we are building this calculator app, and this particular app requires a particular version of the Python libraries. And some other project would require like some other version. Let's say that you are using NumPy in those two projects, and each of this works in different library versions. In order to segregate that, in order to avoid conflicts, we can have virtual environments that's going to stay in one particular project, and that's not going to create you any conflict with the other project. So it's better to create those virtual environments, and that's what we are creating. So here I've given the path and the name of the directory. It's going to create this environment. So I'm giving this custom environment, generate a new virtual environment. This is a base Python and so on. So now I can click on this create, and this I can just give this window. So this is going to replace the current window that I had. So now the virtual environment is kind of getting built. And this is how you would have this. So you have this venv folder, right? So this is where your libraries, Python libraries, are going to be installed. So for this particular calculator application, so we know that we need to display the buttons of the numbers, some basic mathematical symbols and so on, and a screen, basically a screen where the user can give some values and do some calculations, right? So in order to do this, we are going to use a library called as tkinter, which is a GUI library, which stands for graphical user interface. And again, it kind of is a pre-built library. So it comes with the default installation of Python, so you don't have to install it separately. So we don't have that work. So in case you need some libraries, we would often create a file called as requirements.txt, and we would install this. But in this case, we don't need that. So here, this is the project directory that I have. Within that, I have this venv. So I can right click over here, go to this new, and create a new Python file. And I'm going to name this as calculator underscore app dot py, or even you can don't have to mention py, because we have already mentioned that that's going to be Python file. Both are fine. So here we have created this file called as calculator app.py. So now in the first step, let's import the necessary dependencies. So I'm going to say import tkinter, and then from tkinter import message box. So these are the two things that we need. Again, tkinter is for that graphical user interface or the window this is going to create when we run our Python application. So that's going to serve as the user interface for our calculator app. And then we have this message box. So whenever there is an error, right? So let's say that the user is trying to divide 100 by 0, then it's an invalid input, right? So in those cases, it's going to show a pop-up as kind of an error message. And for that, we are using this message box. So next step, let's create a window. So let's just like start from the basics of just creating a window and then adding buttons and so on. So let's go step by step. So here I'll say initialize the root window. Okay. So here let's say root is equal to tk.tk. So this tkinter.tk is basically your window that's going to work as your user interface. Here I'll import this as tk. Okay, so root is equal to tk.tk, where this root is the main window for our application. And then I'll say root dot title. You can give a title, so I'll say that this is a calculator. And then you can say root dot geometry and mention like what's the size you need. Let's say that I have 300 length and let's say x, so 300x 400. So this is going to create a window that is of this particular dimensions, 300 into 400. And then I can say start the tkinter event loop. So this is called as an event loop, so this kind of keeps running. So I'll say root dot main loop. This is all. So this event loop is this is like nothing but we have this calculator application, right? And this code should kind of keep running, and all these are events. So when a user is kind of clicking a button, that's an event. When a calculation is happening, like all these are kind of you can think about as events, and this loop kind of has to keep running until the user is kind of stop this. So that's what this main loop basically does. So first we have imported this tkinter as tk, and we have created a base window. We have given a title for this, and then we have this geometry which basically represents the dimensions of this window. So here I can click on this run symbol, and that's going to create the window for me, right? So you can see this calculator name, right? So this is coming from the root dot title that we have given, and then you have this root dot geometry. So now what we can do is close this. So as long as like you are not closing this main loop is running. So that's why you're like still stay saying this. So it's not like a one-time thing. So this is like running continuously. This is a continuous running process. So that's what this main loop does. So I'll close this. So once the moment I close this, the script execution stops. So now I can say 500 into 500, and now you can notice that the size of the window is going to change. See, so now it is kind of a square with 500 into 500 dimension. So this is how you can create a window. So this main window that you have seen is this root tk.tk, and you have given a title, and then you have a geometry for this. And in the next step, in a calculator, right? So you basically need two things. One is the type screen where the user is going to type and they are going to see the values in it. And below that, you would have set of numbers, right? So now let's create that. So I'll say, so this is for type screen, something like that. Let's call this as type screen. So or user type screen, where it's going to display the values that the user is displaying, or let's say user display. Okay, I'm going to say entry underscore variable is equal to tk dot string variable. So this string variable is nothing but we are assigning, or basically we are creating a variable called as entry variable, and whatever the input that the user is giving or typing in that screen, in that user interface, it's going to be stored in this variable called as entry variable, because we need something, right? So let's say that the user is typing something like 5 plus 5, then this value 5 plus 5 goes into this variable called as entry variable. So whatever the input that the user is giving, so that's going to be read as a string. So this is the purpose of this. So we have a string variable that's going to act as the placeholder or the bucket that's going to capture all the user input and store it in a variable called as entry variable. And then I'll call this as entry is equal to tk.entry, and within this we have to pass the root window because we are creating this on the root window or the main window, right? So we need that. And then we have a parameter called as text variable. So in this text variable, you have to pass your entry variable that you have created just now, where the variables, the values has to pass, and then you can mention things like what's the font that you need. Let's say that I want this Arial 10 is the font. Again, these are like things that you can play around. So you have like these fonts and so on. And let's say that I mentioned this justify uh, is equal to, let's say, right. So justify right is nothing but your texts are going to be aligned towards the right side. So you will see like when we run this and get the window, you can just like wait for it, and then the border width and those things. These are like more of like visual components that we are adding. And we have something called as a relief that's going to add kind of a 3D look to your screen. So tk.sunken is like kind of like a depth would have that screen would have a depth so that it looks kind of in a bit of 3D, like how it would look in a calculator screen. So this is what we have. We have the variable that's going to capture the user's input, like whatever they are typing, and then we have this entry. So this is going to add the screen to this root window. So for that, and then we have to pack this to the window, right? So I can say the entry.pack. So this is going to add this, screen that we have created and add this to the window that we have already have. So I'll say entry.pack fill is equal to tk.both. All these are again the visual components, like how the fill should be. So it should like filled in a proper way. We shouldn't like have empty spaces and so on. So that's the purpose. So we have this pad sizes, like the sizes on the horizontal side, on the vertical side, and so on, to have like enough space there. So we have this ipad by some value, so you can play around with that and run the app to see like how these values are changing the look and feel of your application. So you can like explore that. So for now, I'll just like go with this arbitrary values, like not much attention given here. So we have this entry variable that's given, that's been created using this tk.string variable that's going to capture the input, and then we have this, we are adding this entry to this root, which is the main window that we have, and the variable where the values should be passed in is passed to this text variable parameter, and this entry variable is the one that we have created here, and what's the font, how the text should be aligned. So all these visual parameters are like present over here. And then you have entry.pack. So we are packing this particular widget of screen. You can call this as, let's say, a widget or a screen to this base tk root. So we have this fill, like again filling this, adding some pad spaces and so on. So this is it. So now I'll run this and I'll show you how this app works now. So I'll run this, and now you are seeing this, right? So you see this a bit of a 3D feel, or it's kind of like looks, it's kind of like sunken here. So this is what this relief does. Now you see this application. So I'll just like comment this. So now you will see like how this looked previously. So when I run this, you just like see a empty window. You don't have that screen and so on. So when I uncomment this, you can see that we have added a screen, right? So we can like type in something, the user can type in something, and that's going to be saved in this variable called as entry variable. But again, we're not going to let them type here. We are going to let them click on the buttons that we are going to create below. Okay, so in the next step, let's add the button configuration. So I'll call this as button configurations. So I'll say buttons list. So button list is equal to, so I'm going to create a list of lists. So in this list, I'll say 7, 8, 9, and then let's say we have this divide. Okay, so I'll copy this and paste it 3 times, 3 more times, and I'll press a tab. So that's going to create this indentation. So here it should be 4, 5, and 6. Here let's have a multiplication sign. So let's put a asterisk, or even you can put a x. So that's like up to you. And here I'll have 1, 2, and 3. So this is basically how you would have, in your keypad, right? So that's the same orientation that we are working on. So I have this, the last part, let's have C, that's going to clear everything. And let's have 0, let's have equal to sign, and finally let's have add. Okay. Okay, so now we have just like created this in such a way that how it would look like in a simple calculator. So this is the how the orientation would be, right? So we have 7, 8, 9, and then you would have the divide symbol, something like that. You would have 4, 5, 6, multiplication 1, 2, 3, and so on. Again, you can give like different order as well. It's up to you. You can give this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. But this is how it would look like in a typical number pad in your PC. So let's have this. So we have the numbers, we have the arithmetic operation, four arithmetic operation over here, and then we have C, which is going to clear the entire screen, and then you have zero, and then you have equal to sign, which is going to add this. When you add 7 plus 8, so you give you click on 7 and then click on plus and then click on 8 and then you click on equal to, so that's going to give you the output, right? So we have this button configuration. So now we need to add this to the screen that we have created, the window that we have created, right? So for this, what we are going to do is each of this should kind of sit in a frame. So this is one particular row or a frame. So this should be the next row. This is like the third row, fourth row, and so on. So let's see how we can do that. So for that, we are going to use a for loop. So I'll say for row in buttons list, right? So when I use this for row in button list, this is a for loop and it's going to iterate over this button list. So when this for loop runs for the first time, row takes the value of this particular list because this is the first list, right? So if you pay close attention, this is a list, or this button list is basically a list that has list as elements. So this is the first element, but this is a list and this is a list and so on. So this button list has four other lists within this. And when I run the for loop for the first time, the first iteration would give this value, this particular list to this row, and then we can like work our way upon that. So I'll say for row in button text, I'm going to create a frame. So I'll say button underscore frame is equal to tk dot frame. Okay. And we have to pass this root because we need to add this to our window. So I'm passing this root to this tk dot frame. And then I'll say button underscore frame dot pack. So when we create, previously we have created an entry and use this entry dot pack in order to fit that there. So similarly, we can say that button frame dot pack and say expand is equal to true. So it's going to expand depending upon the size of the window filled. So make sure that the contents are filled and there are like no empty unnecessary spaces over there. Okay, so this is what we have. So in the first step, we are creating like separate frames for each of this row, and later we are going to add this row. I'll show this to you how this would work. So I'll run this. So this would create a frames, like three kind of frames over here. And in the next step, we need to add like all these buttons over here. So now that can be done with another for loop. So within this for loop, I'm creating another for loop and I'll say for button text. So all these are text, right? So I'll say for button text in row. So this row is nothing but these individual list, and within this individual list, we are iterating over this individual string values that we have. So I'll say for button text in row, I'm going to say button is equal to tk dot button. So we have this button function that we have in tkinter. So we're going to use that tk dot button, and within that you have to pass this button frame that we have created in the previous step, right? And then the text that you need to pass should be the button text that we are iterating over that. And again, you can mention like the font and other stuff that we created. Maybe yeah, I'll put it in the next line so that we have some space. So I'll say that font is equal to the same font, Arial 18, but you can use different font for buttons. So that's up to you. And relief. So previously we have a sunken type, right? So you have like different reliefs there. So I'll say tk dot, you have this flat groove raised and so on, right? So I'll use the raised one. So you can like use this uppercase raised and say BD, the previously we have used like this input weight of this 10. Now I'm going to reduce this for this button. So for the screen it would be like a bit bold, and for the numbers like the buttons it's going to be like a little less bold or something like that. So I use this BD is equal to 5, and similarly now I have to use this button pack. So I'll say button dot pack side is equal to tk dot left. So like where it should be assigned. So that's the purpose of this. So we have this tk dot left expand is equal to true, and then fill. like all these are like the same thing. So we are like reusing like all these stuff. So like no, nothing complex in it to make sure that the UI looks okay. So this is it. So now we have added the buttons. So first, like we are creating this base window. We are adding a title and geometry to that, and then we have created a display where the user given by the input are kind of displayed in that smaller screen in the top of the window. And then we have this button list. So we are iterating over each of this list that's present over here, and then we are iterating over this each values in this second for loop. So these individual values, you are passing this to tk.button, adding this to the button frame that we have created, and passing the text. This button text is nothing but the individual values that you're going to run. And then we are like packing this. So how this would work is when this for loop runs for the first time, it takes this particular list and it create a empty frame and it packs it within this window. And then within that first frame that it has created, right, or the first row it has created in the window, it's going to add the buttons. So how we are going to add the buttons is using this tk.button, pass the exact text, and that's kind of taken from this button text in row, button frame, font, relief, and so on, and then like pack it. So now let's run this. Now we are seeing like all these values and so on. So when I click this 7, like now we are not like seeing the values over here when it's clicked, but that's the next thing that we do. But so far what we have done is we have created a base window, we have added a title, given the dimensions for this, and we have created this display where the user is going to see the values, and then we have like created all these numbers and the clear symbol 0 equal to and so on. So we have basically created this button configurations for us. So now we need to add the functionality to this, like what happens when I click something. So you are seeing this click, but nothing is happening over here. Like what happens? So now we need to say that when the user clicks on 7, the 7 should appear over here. When they plus, enter plus, so that plus should also kind of display over here. And when they press 8, it should also be displayed. And finally, when they press equal to, so that's going to calculate the result and that's going to display the result over there. So this is what we have to do, right? So for that, we are going to create a function. So here I'll say, so usually like we would create the functions like in the top of the code after importing the dependencies. So let's write that over there. So I'll say define on click. That means when a button is clicked, like all these are buttons that we have seen over here, and all these can be considered as an event. So on the click of a button, or basically on the click of the button, which is an event, on every event, first we need to extract the text that the user has given. So I'll say event dot widget dot get, okay, so it should be c get text. Okay, so basically like what's going to happen is when a button is clicked, this text is basically coming from this button text, right? So let's say that this 7 is the button that's being clicked, and we are passing this to this tk.button using this text parameter. So from this text we are like extracting like what's the exact text that the user has clicked on. So let's say that the user has clicked on the number 2. So when they click on that, this function is getting called and we extract that text value, which is 2 in this case. So even though these are numbers, these are like the input are taken as string. So that's why like we are handling this like as we would handle a text. And now let's say if this text is equal to a equal to sign, that means like when they want to do the calculation, so it can be like 5 plus 10 plus 3 plus 2, and finally when they press on equal to, we need to do the calculation, right? So until that we need to like add all those things, or like keep a list of all the things that they have typed in, like all the numbers and the symbols that the user has typed in. But the moment they pressed on equal to sign, we need to do the calculation. So here we are going to add a try and except block. So here I'll say result is equal to a var, and within this I'm going to convert this to a string. Again, it's going to be coming as a string, but just to make sure that we are not like getting any data type errors, I'm making sure that we are converting this to a string. So entry variable that we have created previously and get this. Okay, so the previous like the entry variable is nothing but like whatever we have in the screen, right? And then say entry variable dot set result. So I'll explain you what's happening in this. Let me just probably like complete this so that would make more sense. And in the next step I'll say except exception as e message box dot show error, and we have to give a title, and this title going to be error, and then we are going to say invalid input. So this should happen when the user has typed in something like 100 divided by 0 or some number divided by 0. Basically when an input is not valid, when we get a error. And then we are going to have a else if condition. So I'm going to say else if text is equal to C. In that case, we have to clear everything that's present in it, present in the screen or the display, right? So I'll say entry variable dot set a null string. That means like we are going to keep it as empty. So this is going to be the entry variable. And the next step is finally, if both of these are not the case, else you need to say entry variable dot set entry variable dot get plus text. Okay, so this may look a bit complex, but I'll explain you this in a minute. And finally, we have to give the button click thing here. So you have to say button dot bind. So bind this function with the button click. So you say button one. So this button one basically represents the mouse left click thing. So when the left button of the mouse is clicked, this function is called from your tkinter application. So click. Okay, so let's try to understand this. So this is basically like the entire code to build our calculator thing. So first let's try to understand like what's happening in this function. So when a button is clicked, the input parameter for this is an event. Event is nothing but when the user is clicking a button, that's considered as an event. So from this event, we are getting the exact text or basically the exact value that the user has clicked. If the user has clicked the button of 8, then we get that 8 value using this event.widget.c get text. So that's going to extract that value 8 and it's going to store that in the variable called as text. Now this would happen for any button. So this would like happen for like 7, 8, 9, all those things. But specifically when equal to sign is called. So now let's understand which buttons has special functionalities. So if you say this 7, 8, 9, all these are numbers, all these symbols do some operation, but C and equal to sign are like the special buttons that we have, because equal to sign should perform an action that is calculating the addition, subtraction, or whatever the operation or the expression that the user is giving, and C should clear the screen. So these two things are like unique functionalities compared to the other buttons. So that's why we are kind of having this if and else if statements. When a equal to sign is clicked, we mention like what should happen, and when C is clicked, like what should happen, right? Maybe first let's look at like this else if text C, because like that's like a simpler example. So the user has clicked the C button. Let's say that they have typed in something already and they've clicked on the the C button. So what happens at that case is we extract whatever they've clicked using this event.widget.c get. So when they have clicked equal to, so this text would have the value as sorry, when they have clicked C, right? So this text would have the value as C. And now we check that in the if statement and the else if statement, this is going to execute because the user has clicked on C, and we are checking if the user has clicked on C. Now we say entry variable dot set empty string. So I have two double quotes without any space or nothing there, nothing is there. So I have a empty null string over there. So entry variable dot set null string. So what's that's going to do is, if you remember, this entry variable is nothing but the screen that we are creating on top of like or above all these buttons. We are creating this entry variable, this screen, and this entry variable holds that particular whatever you are seeing in the screen, right? So the user is typing 5 plus 8 plus 10. So this entire thing, 5 plus 10, 5 plus 10 plus 2 or something, right? All this entire thing is saved as a single string, and that's saved in the variable called as entry variable. And then we are passing this to this text variable and so on. So when the user has clicked on C, we are overwriting this entry variable to a null string. So what happens is, when there is some text like 5 plus 10 plus 2 on the screen, but the user has clicked on C, that's going to overwrite this with a null string. So I'll show this to you. And then we have binded this. So button dot bind. So every button is binded with this left click of your mouse, and on click it's going to call this function, right? So I'll run this, and let's say that I'm typing something like 5 minus 3 minus 10. So let's say that I don't want to do this calculation. So I can click on this C. Now everything kind of disappears. So basically what's happening here is, when the user has like typed in something, so it's going to stay in the screen. but the moment they type C, we are replacing all the values with this null string, the entry variable. So that's going to load or save all the things that we have typed in. So now we have typed, like, let's say 5 minus 10 minus 3, right? So all those are stored in this entry variable, but later we are overriding this with this null string. Okay, so now let's say, what if the user has typed in equal to sign? So let's say that we are running this application, the user has typed in something like 10 plus 5 and they are pressing this equal to. So now what happens in this case is, now this if condition gets satisfied because the user has typed in equal to, and this equal to we are extracting from this event.widget.get, and we check that and we see that it's a equal to sign. Now what happens is, we have this eval. So this eval basically evaluates expression, a mathematical expression. Maybe I can show this to you in a separate script. So I'll create a separate Python script and I'll call this as check.py, and here I'll show this to you as eval something like 5 plus 10, print this. So it says 15, right? So this is what eval does. So even when you put it as a string, that's going to evaluate that string if it's a mathematical expression, and that's going to give you the value, the exact value. So that's what this eval does. So this 5 plus 10 we are going to pass in from our calculator in the form of a string, right? So what happens is, when the user is pressed on or clicked on the equal to sign, we have this save as that's going to do the calculation. This entry variable dot get, basically what it does is, the user would have typed in something like 5 plus 10 plus sorry, 10 is not possible, right? So let's say that the user has typed in 5 plus 9 plus 3. Let's say that this is what the user has given. So this entire string, this entire thing, not the single value, the entire string is saved in this variable called as entry variable, because this variable holds whatever is present in the screen, not just single button click. The single button click are later stored in this ticks, but the entire expression, whatever we are storing in this or seeing in the screen, is stored in this variable called as entry variable. So 5 plus 9 plus 3 is basically what happens in this entry variable dot get. So when you get this entire thing, your entire content that you're seeing in the screen is passed to this eval, and we make sure that it's in the string format, and this is going to do the calculation. This evaluate is going to do the calculation, and it's going to store it in the variable called as results. So, and then previously we use this entry variable dot set in order to replace whatever is present in the screen with empty string. Now we are using the same entry variable dot set, but instead of null string, now we are displaying the result, the calculation. So that's what it basically happens. Whenever when there is an exception, that means, like, when you put 100 is divided by 0, this is going to eval is going to raise a exception, a error, and whenever we see a error, we are going to throw a error message. So you will see that I'll show this to you in a minute, but this is the exact thing. So when C is clicked, we have to clear everything. When equal to sign is clicked, we have to get the entire expression that you're seeing in the screen, pass it to eval, do the calculation, and display it on the screen. So that's what happened. But what if both equal to and C or not click? Like, what if the user is clicking, like, let's say we have to run it again. The user is like clicking 7 plus 5 or something, right? So what if, like, they click like something like that? So when they click 7 plus 5, so now we are not doing any calculation, but we have to just like append all these things, right, to the entry variable. So if you see this, when the user is not clicking equal to or C, we just have to concatenate all these strings. So that's what is happening here. So now this is being concatenated as a single string. If you see this 5 plus 9 plus 3, right? So what happens is, we would concatenate these individual values as like 7 plus 7 plus like 5. So it would like look like 7 plus 7 plus, let's say, 5. So that's what happened in this else statement. So when some other buttons except this equal to and C are clicked, this else condition runs, and in this else we just have entry variable dot set. So we are going to display this. What we are going to display is entry variable dot get. So get whatever is present in that and add it to whatever the user has typed in next. So when I do this, right, so I'll clear this, I'll click 7. So now the entry variable would hold the value as 7. Now I'll click plus. So plus is not equal to, plus is not C. So your else condition is going to run. So it says entry variable dot get. So previously the entry variable was 7. Now the user has clicked on plus symbol. So this text is going to get that plus symbol, and both of these are going to be saved in this entry variable, and we are just like displaying that over here. We are displaying that 7 plus in this entry variable. So now I can again plus like press 3 and press 100 or something, right? So it's just going to do the concatenation, and then like once we click on this equal to sign, that's going to do the math, and that's going to display this. So this is how it works. So when equal to is clicked on, we have to calculate the all the numbers and the expressions that we have, display the result. If C is clicked, just replace all that with null string so that you don't see anything on the screen. But except that if some other numbers and symbols are clicked, just like concatenate into a string, which is going to be later passed on to this eval when the user finally clicks on equal to string sign. So this is the entire thing that happens. And here the other thing that we have added is button dot bind. So we have to bind all these buttons to the on click function, because if not, it doesn't know what it has to do when the user has clicked something. So this we have seen, right? When the user has clicked on a button, nothing was happening. So we have to bind this button to this specific action, which is on click in this case. Okay, so this is how this entire thing works. Now I'll maybe rerun this and I'll show this to you. Stop and rerun. So this is going to start this application. So let's say that I'm typing 7 plus 7. So that's going to, and press equal to, so that's going to display the result as 14. So when I click on C, that's going to clear all these things. Now let's see how this exception works. When there is an exception, when the eval is not able to calculate something, so it's going to say that it's an error, right? So error message is going to pop up because we have this message box show error. So when I put something like 100 divided by 0, we have a pop-up, and the title of this pop-up is error, and it says invalid input. So this is what we have done in this exception part. So message box is this message box, show error. So there's this like message symbol, and the message is invalid input is displayed over here, and this title that we have given this error is what you are seeing here. And you can click on this OK, and you can clear this, and then you can again do like whatever calculations that you have to do. So this is like how you can create a simple calculator in Python. So I hope like everyone understood like whatever we have discussed. So if you have like some doubts, have not like understood few things properly, just like rewatch those specific bits, so that will like make more sense to you. If not, like I mentioned in the comments, I'll try to like clarify your doubts. So before we sign off, I'll just like give you a quick recap of what we have done. So for this calculator app, we are using this tkinter, which is a graphical user interface, the GUI library that we have in Python, which comes as a pre-installed library. And then we have a message box that's going to show a pop-up whenever there is a error. We have a function that's going to handle the input. So when the user has clicked on equal to sign, we have this eval to calculate whatever is present in that expression, 5 plus 7 plus 2, or 5 plus 100 plus 3, like whatever is present over there. And then you have this C. Whenever C is clicked, just like reset the screen, just put just empty screen over there. And if not, just like concatenate all those things and display it on the screen. So that's the basic thing. What this on click does is like, when you click a button, what should be present in the entry variable, or entry variable, you can think about the top screen that we have above the buttons. So this on click determines what should be displayed on the screen, on the top part of the screen when a button is clicked. So that's the purpose of this entire thing. So this is the initialize the root window code. So we are initializing this and saving this to the variable called as root, adding a title and geometry to the dimensions and so on. And then this part is like adding this display. When a user is typed in something, it should be displayed like on top, right? So this is the display that we are creating with the entry variable where your value is going to be saved. This is what we are like kind of altering in this on click part, where we say that entry variable dot set. And then we have this buttons list, just in the format of how it would be present in a typical number pad. So we have 7 8 9 4 5 6, all those numbers with C and equal to sign. And then we are iterating through two for loops to kind of like create buttons for all these individual text values. And then we are binding this to this on click function. And this main loop, this event loop, kind of keeps running. So whenever the user is clicked on something, it's going to give you the result and so on. So this is how this entire thing works. And the main interesting thing here is, so we have understood how you can use tkinter, and we have also seen like how you can use for loops, and how you can use a nested for loop. So we are using a for loop within a for loop. So this is what we call as a nested for loop. And we have also seen how you can create a function and then like kind of use it again and again in this particular code. So whenever a button is clicked, the same function is being used again and again, right? So these are like some of the programming concepts which we have discussed earlier, but again, this is how everything would kind of work in action. So all you can do is like, once this code is completed, just execute this and just like type in something, and that's going to show you the results, like whatever the result that we have. Clear this, and I'll say 20 into 100, that's going to give you 2000. So this is how you can create this calculator app. So I'll give the link for this particular code in this video description. So check that out and please practice this, and this is going to be helpful for you. And in the upcoming videos, let's focus on more conceptual things as well as this mini projects and more complex stuff as well. So I'll see you in the next upload. Thanks for watching.